Hello, welcome to Chat with Dr. Kat. I'm Dr. Kat. Nice to see you today. Today we're going to be talking about anxiety. What is anxiety? What are some of the forms of anxiety? What are some of the issues around anxiety? Because as a norm, most people feel some level of anxiety. Some of it is normal, just normal anxious feelings and stress that we feel. And other times it's much more extensive than that. So I kind of wanted to break it down and give you some ideas about what anxiety is and some of the definitions. So just remember, if you have any thoughts or feelings, let me know. Go to chatwithdrkat.com. If you'd like to be a guest on an episode, again, go to chatwithdrkat.com. Let me know. Remember, no fluff, no judgment, just real talk that leads to real change. Okay, let's start. Anxiety. What is anxiety? Anxiety are those feelings that we have where we're uncomfortable. Maybe we have a racing heart. Maybe we have sweaty palms. Maybe this warm feeling comes over our entire body. We feel dizzy. We feel nauseous. Our stomach hurts. Maybe we have to run to the restroom. There's a lot of different things that go on in our body when we are feeling anxiety. Here's another thing to think about anxiety. I often use this example. When you are in a state of fight or flight, meaning you're in a heightened level of anxiety, do I want to stay in the situation or do I want to flee? Kind of back to the old caveman days of going out and hunting for our food with some large animal approaching us. Do we stay and fight to bring food back to our home or do we run? Well, the anxiety, the adrenaline that goes on in our body creates that fight or flight, which is in a center of our brain. What goes on physically in our body is that our body starts preparing. Even our blood starts to thicken a bit because if we get injured, we need it to be able to form a scab. So when you're in a heightened level of stress and anxiety on a daily basis, our blood is thickened just in that fight or flight state. So what does that do to our organs? It makes our organs work harder. There's a lot of physical things that go on in our body. And that's why it's a good thing to not feel anxiety on the regular. Okay, let's put that aside now, but keep that in mind. The first one is generalized anxiety. This is one that we use. It's a diagnosis, and oftentimes people use it kind of freely, like it's just generalized anxiety. It sounds not as serious, but if you get the diagnosis of generalized anxiety, it does have varying degrees. But really, it is marked by excessive worry about everything, work, home life, traffic, whatever it is, where you feel anxious. Here's another thing. Most people don't realize what anxiety is. Now, I've gone over a bit of a definition of the physical things that happen, and now I'm going to go over some diagnosis. But really think about it. I have people say to me, I wake up in the middle of the night thinking. I wake up in the middle of the night trying to process a thought, and it goes over and over and over in my mind, and I usually wake up around the same time. What we call that is early morning anxiety, early wake anxiety. So what does that do? It means that your subconscious mind is overwrought with anxiety, and it wakes you up, and it starts you thinking again. That's anxiety. That's not just you overthinking or, I think too much. Sometimes people will say, I get a little nervous sometimes, and then they describe it, and I tell them that's anxiety. Anxiety has become a word that is overused and underused. Sometimes people absolutely have anxiety, but they don't call it that. And other people say they have anxiety when really they're just stressed and they're actually able to cope with it. So let's just keep looking at the definitions. Another one is a panic disorder. Panic disorder is a big deal. That's when you are maybe driving in a car, you're in a conversation, you are in a classroom, and all of a sudden you have difficulty breathing. It's almost like this, difficulty, can't catch your breath, heart palpitations, maybe even chest pains that mimic a heart attack. That's a panic attack. You're desperate, unable to control your breathing and unable to control what's going on in your body. Not comfortable whatsoever. And that usually stems from extreme anxiety, fearful of not finding a way out, unable to be in control. Oftentimes people will complain that they have it in a car or, like I said, a classroom, and it's because they're kind of locked into a room. So if you are having panic attacks or you're feeling extreme anxiety, please go seek help. There are so many tools and techniques out there. There are medications as well if you need it. There's supplements that you could be taking, adding more exercise to your life, eating healthy, sleeping right. There's a lot of different things that you could do to actually help anxiety. You don't have to live with it. You don't have to live with anxiety. And let me tell you, it's one of the things that I always say. Anxiety, guilt, shame are the gifts that keep on giving. They won't stop until you master it and you allow your brain to take over the anxiety. If not, anxiety will take over. It will. Okay. Social anxiety. Social anxiety usually occurs when somebody already has some level of anxiety. And that's where you fear going into places that you may be judged, you may be scrutinized. And again, this could be in your head just because you have the social anxiety. Rather than thinking I'm going to go out, have a great time. Now, all of us have this thing of like, oh, who's going to be there? Am I going to wear the right thing? Or maybe just even like, I'm so excited to get there. That's okay. That's just kind of normal little jitters or stress that we feel before we go out. But anxiety, social anxiety, is when you really feel fear that you're going to be scrutinized and eventually maybe avoid going out. That's social anxiety. Now, phobias. Phobias stem from fears. Phobias of fear of flying, fear of spiders. You have so many different fears. Fears of stairs, fears of elevators, numerous fears, phobias, that there's every type of phobia out there that leads us to a place of anxiety where we have an emotional reaction. You know, when, say you're walking, you have a fear of bees and all of a sudden a bee comes and you are literally having this physical reaction. You're screaming, you're running. It's intense fear that's coming from that anxiety, from that phobia. Now we have irrational fears as well. I will share mine, and that is cockroaches. Okay. I have a ridiculous fear but it's irrational. And why do I say it's irrational? Because I am a person, I can pick up rats, snakes, mice, spiders, scorpions, put me in a pit with them. I don't know, it probably wouldn't affect me. If you tell me it's a beetle and not a cockroach, I'll pick it up. I was one of those parents that would go out searching for bugs in the garden with my kids, and we'd pick them up and look at them. I don't have much fear around those things. One roach, and I'm climbing the walls. It's a bit irrational. I know where it stems from. It was a situation I had years ago when I went onto a school campus in the evening and I'm walking, crunch, crunch, crunch. What is that? Crunch, 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 to find out the entire place was infested. Anyway, it's a fear that's there. Some of it I work on, some of it I don't. It's irrational. It doesn't affect my life greatly, so I kind of leave it alone. Now, if I had fear of flying, which kept me from traveling, and traveling is one thing that I absolutely love, that would be a phobia that I would want to work on. If you are working in an environment where there's spiders and you want to be working in this environment, let's work on that phobia and that fear. If your phobia and fear are keeping you from doing things, again, my irrational cockroach. If I know that there's cockroaches somewhere, look, it could be at a restaurant, it could be in where I travel. I don't not go, but sometimes I am on the lookout. I'll even say, ugh, I can feel the cockroaches around here. I'll be more mindful. I don't stop walking across the street, walking down the block where maybe there's piles of trash. I don't avoid. I will have a reaction, but it doesn't keep me from doing things. If something, a fear or a phobia that is keeping you from doing things, that's pretty extreme. That's where you want to seek help. That's where you want to seek help, because what it's doing is it's trapping you from living. The next one is agoraphobia. Now, agoraphobia really is, people look at it as a fear of leaving the home, so they never leave the home. But really where it stems from is that you don't want to go to places where you're not going to be able to escape. Maybe you go to a concert, maybe you go to a restaurant and you realize, how would I get out of here? How would I escape? And that fear becomes so overwhelming that you choose to never leave the home. That's agoraphobia. If you are in that place, please seek out telehealth, mental health, seek out a therapist online, work with it, because what you're doing is you're missing out on life. And that fear, that anxiety is keeping you from experiencing. Separation anxiety. So separation anxiety is one that we often see in children, younger children, but we can also see it in adulthood. Separation anxiety is the fear of being separated from someone in our life. So let's take a child, for instance. They fear that the mom or dad, that separation, it causes an emotional and physical reaction. But a lot of their fear is that they may not see that person again. So they fear that if they leave, they're not going to see them, and it's that ultimate separation. Definitely an issue you want to seek help. If you feel that your child is experiencing separation anxiety, seek help. They don't need to suffer. Now, I know sometimes parents think, well, I don't really want to get them into therapy at a young age. I don't really want to get them to feel that they've got a problem. Let's twist it. Let's look at it a different way. Maybe what you're doing is you're getting the help for your child that they need so that they don't have something that snowballs later. Maybe what you're doing is you're empowering your child with skills and techniques to help them solve the issue that they have. Empower them. Don't look at it as a weakness. Empower them. Here's another one, selective mutism. Why is that, something that we don't normally talk about? You don't hear that one a lot, but that's usually when, given an example, say your child or of a child you're a teacher in the classroom, or you hear about somebody who is not speaking, yet they're speaking out on the playground. What happens is they're asked a question and they have such fear and such anxiety that they become mute. They cannot form the words to speak. That is extreme anxiety in that moment, and they become very quiet. And then later on, maybe they're out in the playground or they're back home, and now they're talking. Well, why could they talk then and now and not then? And it's anxiety. It freezes. We also see this in kids with ADD. There's a freezing that goes on. They do their homework at night. They've got it all prepared. They put it neatly into their backpack. They get to the classroom the next day and they don't turn it in. And parents are like, why? Why didn't you turn it in? We worked on it together, or you showed me it was done beautifully. Why wouldn't you turn it in? And you've got an email from the teacher saying, hey, so-and-so did not turn in the assignment. And you say, but it was there. It's a freezing of anxiety. Either it's the anxiety that they're going to be judged. There's an anxiety that someone's going to say it's not good enough. The anxiety of just taking it out of the backpack. And it's such a difficult thing because most people that don't experience anxiety says, just take the paper out, put it on the table and walk away. It's that simple. But when you're in that moment, that anxiety traps you. That's how serious it is. And that's how powerful the brain is. That in those moments, we can't overcome it with common sense, with problem solving skills. We just freeze. Why is it important to seek out a therapist if you have experiences like that? Again, you don't have to live like that. Don't have to live like that. Reach out, seek help. Also, on another episode, we've been talking about ChatGPT. There's different ways to use AI to look into seeking help. I think it's a great idea. If you're not ready to go to therapy yet, research it. I will say this, ChatGPT and all AI tends to be very supportive and caring. They don't push. They don't get you to be a problem solver or solution focused. What it does is it gives you information. If you say, oh, this is how I feel, well, I hope you feel better, but here are some tools. Or, hey, you can try this. It's not going to give you the live person experience. It's just not in that state. But if you're not ready to seek out therapy, please research it, start getting the help, because you don't have to live like that with all that extreme anxiety. Okay, now I want to go into a few other areas. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Now we do see that in a lot of different disorders, but that is stemmed from anxiety. So what happens is that's when you see somebody having to wash their hands excessively, or maybe they have to go to a door, click, 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 over and over and over again. They have a specific number that they use, and oftentimes that number can change. Maybe it's 8 times one day, 9 times another, back doors 9 times, front doors 10 times. And if they don't do it, it's this overwhelming feeling of anxiety. Oh my gosh, I did it 5 times. Now something bad is going to happen. Something bad's going to happen because I didn't do the front door 9 times and I didn't do the back door 9 times. And then they sit there and think and think and think. Sometimes can lead to panic disorder or other things like that. So if you have somebody who's experiencing OCD, especially a child, it more than likely, they're not going to necessarily grow out of it. You want to work with them with it, look at different things online, or you can also seek therapy because it's an uncomfortable feeling. It can be torturous for somebody within their own mind. PTSD. Now, PTSD can be linked with anxiety and depression. You'll hear me say this in many different episodes. One of the easiest disorders to treat, especially if treated initially. When you have a trauma, we kind of go through this acute stress disorder phase, meaning it's building. If you seek help during that time, that's the best time. Most parents, people will say, you know what? I think I'm okay. Let me just see how it goes. After 6 months, PTSD can settle in. We want to get it before that. When you're in that acute stress phase after the trauma, we can treat it, we can work with you, give you the tools and the skills necessary to overcome it. But oftentimes, again, people wait and say, I'll just see if it gets worse. I think I can handle it. Look, go for a couple of sessions, go in for a few months, done, get out. I am a firm believer, you don't have to be in therapy for the rest of your life. Get in, go in with good intention, follow through on homework that the therapist will give you to continue that treatment. Now, when I say homework, don't get a little nervous there, but most of the time you see a therapist once a week. In between, if you're given homework, journaling, different things to do, what it does is it keeps you in a continual therapeutic process, because 7 days can be a long time between interventions with your therapist. So go with full intention. Go with the ability that you are going to head this straight on, that you're going to work in your full capacity and get to therapy. Now, sometimes it's a struggle because you're locked into the trauma, and that's okay. And therapy can take a long time, or it can take a short time. It really does depend on where you're at. Just remember to be fueled and ready with choices and options, which sometimes can be a hard thing when you're feeling so much stress and so much anxiety. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Here's the last thing I want to say. Anxiety is a pretty serious disorder, meaning it can torture you. You can experience every single day heart palpitations, nervous feeling, anxiety feeling, frozen feeling, all of those different things. But here's the other thing about anxiety. I'm going to draw something for you really quick. You know, normally on a regular day-to-day in our life, we have regular anxiety. We have ups and downs, and, you know, we go through life, and it kind of looks like this, you know, where you can drop down into depression, sadness. But for the most part, here is your regular status line, okay? You have these other parts where your peaks are of anxiety. They go up, they come down. They go up, they come down. You're stressed out about an assignment, then you fix it, you're there. Here's the thing with anxiety, and I show people that I work with all the time. This is your resting state, the line that goes across, okay? That's where you're like, oh, okay, I did the paper. It's all good. You feel refreshed, you feel relaxed. But when you're in a constant state of anxiety, this is your false state of rest. So what does that look like? It goes like this, right? Okay. Now, if you're at this level of constant anxiety on the daily, you have that paper due and you go, oh, okay, oh my gosh, I got to get it done. And then you get it done and you're here and you're like, okay, oh, okay, I got it done. Yay. Okay. And you think you're relaxed, but you're actually not. You're still at this vibration level, okay? And you're on to the next paper and the next paper and the next paper, and your body never gets to the place of rest. This is what heightened levels of anxiety does. It tricks you. It tricks you into feeling that you're at a resting state when you're actually not. That's why it's important, because all of those things are going on in your body. You know, the palpitations, the racing heart, the sweaty palms, all of those different things. And we start to get used to feeling that way. We feel that that's a normal feeling, and oftentimes feel, I don't have anxiety. When you see someone who's literally vibrating, I don't have anxiety. And it's because you got used to the discomfort. You got used to the feelings of all of those things I described as normal. It's not normal. Not that you're not normal. Those feelings aren't normal. You shouldn't have those feelings. You shouldn't go through life experiencing those emotions and feelings and physical reactions every day. Life could be better. Go seek help. Go seek help. It will change your world. Change your world with the skills and things that you learn, possibly medication from a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist, don't go to anyone else. You want to go to somebody who treats that disorder. Sometimes people will come to me and say, oh, I saw my gynecologist. They gave me something for anxiety. That treats something totally different. Don't go to a psychiatrist who specializes, because that way you can get the help you need in a quicker way. Okay, we've learned about anxiety today. If you have any questions, thoughts, or feelings, let me know. chatwithdrkat.com. I hope this helped you in realizing maybe some things that you're going through, and also realizing that you don't have to. So have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you on the next episode.